Michael Ashley here for Anthropology 136E. Today I'm talking about archival importing of media into Lightroom 3. And let's just get right into it here. So we're going to be following the principles of Peter Crow's book, The Damn Book, on this notion of a virgin copy, which basically is a copy of your file that comes directly out of your camera, pristine and untouched. That is saved somewhere safe, and then you'll work on additional copies in a working copy workflow. So how might that work for us? From your camera or your SD card using a card reader, we're going to have Lightroom do the heavy lifting for us, adding particular descriptive metadata to our files and converting the files from RAW into Adobe's open digital negative format. It's going to present a copy onto your hard drive and at the same time give you the option of making a second copy as a backup onto an external drive. Now as you work, you're going to have your original copy somewhere safe outside of your workflow, and you'll have your working copies that you make that you'll be giving to your team members, and those will live inside a Dropbox. And all of this will lead to happy goodness. Frowns upside down, smiles, and joyous rapture for those of us who follow this procedure, and not so much good things for those who may not when hard drives fail and die, as they tend to do. So let's take a look at how we can make some good decisions as opposed to less good decisions in our archival workflow. Now, let's begin. For starters, I have here, my camera is actually hooked up to my hard drive right now, but you can't see it because I would need to use some sort of imaging software . Let's begin. So here we are on my desktop, and I have a folder here called D60 dump for my Canon D60. I got a folder where I'm going to put my personal files out of my camera, and a folder I have here set up for images I'm taking off of my camera specifically for this course. The V stands for Virgin Dump. Let's begin. So here we are on my desktop here, and you'll see I have a folder I've set up called D60 dump, and it's the place where I'm going to start to put my files directly out of my camera. So I have a folder here, Anthro 136E Spring 11 VD for Virgin Dump, as in the Virgin files will be stuck there, and a Michael Ashley personal folder for everything that isn't related to this class. Now, I mentioned right versus wrong decision. I'm going to show a tool called image capture. On a PC, you would have an additional tool where you can connect to your camera to get to your files and bring them onto your hard drive. And the problem with using a tool like this as opposed to using something like Lightroom is that the way that we are working for this course is we're making raw captures, these CR2s, and at the same time generating JPEG files. And if I were to import all of these, I would get actually 3 files, because I get the raw file, I'd get the JPEG file, and I'd get its metadata as what's called an XMP sidecar. So I'd get actually 3 files sitting inside of a folder, and that becomes a bit unwieldy and hard to deal with. So we're not going to use image capture to import our files or drag stuff directly off of the SD card. Instead, we're going to go directly into Lightroom. So here we are in Lightroom. I haven't done anything yet other than open the application. And the very first thing we're going to do, of course, is we're going to go to File and go to Import Photos. Now when you import photos from Lightroom and you have a device hooked up and turned on, you'll get the device listed up here, and you can see I see my EOS 60D. So we always begin from the left top corner and work our way down to the bottom right corner. You can see all the images here that we have. These are the Team 5 images that we were working with last week. And these are the ones that I'm going to import for the purposes of this demo. I'm going to begin by unchecking everything, and I'm going to do a couple of checks to my system here. First of all, where are these files going? Right now it wants to have these files go into my pictures folder, but I'm going to have them go onto my desktop into this dump folder that I've set up here. So you can see that now that has changed up here. Render previews, we're going to set the standard. We're going to make sure that that's always the case. And I'm introducing the notion of setting up a second backup copy, which I highly recommend doing if you have an external hard drive that you can set this to work with. So I have something here on this external FireWire drive called Anthro 136E Spring 11. Should sound familiar. Inside I have a media folder, and inside that I've set up a backups folder, and I'm choosing that to make a second copy of my files and save them in case anything else goes wrong. Now, file renaming is a really important thing to do, and we've set up a protocol, which I'm going to show right here, where you have the name of the project. In our case, it's our class, Anthro 136E Spring 11. We have the assignment name, and then we have the team name. So in this case, all I need to do is change it to Team 5, and I'll get a naming convention here. Now, as we move forward, we're going to add an additional thing. We'll be adding our initials to this naming convention, but for right now, this is perfectly fine. Now, additionally, we might want to add some metadata, and we can do that by adding keywords. For example, knowing that this is assignment 3, I could just add assignment 3 to this. We could also set up a preset by simply saying edit presets, pulling down. In this case, I've already started a setup one for Anthro 136E, where I have copyright information. We'll be adding our Creative Commons licensing information here. Some additional information here, a job identifier. This is the focus exercise, for example. And it will automatically add that information to my files during the importing process. So now that I've done this, I need to make a selection of images before I can import anything here. So I'm going to select this first one. I'm going to come down to this last image in the series here. They're all highlighted, and hit the checkbox, and they'll all be selected. And last but not least, up here you want to double check that it's copy as DNG, which will then convert the images to DNG format and then add them automatically to your catalog. Once you've done all these things and you've checked everything's all good to go ahead and hit import. Okay, Lightroom is done. It's completed its import here of the 76 items. It has converted the raw files into DNGs and bound them with their JPEGs and kept the metadata all safe, happy, and good within them. And a couple things I'd like to point out before we leave Lightroom and move on to summary. If I double click on any one of these items, you can see I can move through the previews very fast, which is fantastic. I'm not a patient person when I'm working and doing a review. I want this to happen really quickly. And just to give you a sense of difference here, as you can see, I can move back and forth and see these previews really fast. If I zoom into any one of these and watch the slow loading box, I'm going to wait for the rendering of this particular zoom in full size to happen, and Lightroom has to go back to the original in order to produce the zoomed copy. So you'll see each one of these takes a lot longer, whereas the standard size previews are super fast, which is great. So in subsequent videos, we'll be talking about the reviewing process and moving images and whatnot. But for now, we'll leave Lightroom and summarize. So archival importing a media into Lightroom 3. Use Lightroom to import your camera media. Lightroom will automatically produce DNG files, digital negatives from your raw captures. It will make backups for you automatically onto external drives. It will render beautiful previews that can be useful for speeding up your workflow, but also giving you a secondary copy of your stuff in case everything goes wrong. You can add preset metadata at the time of ingest, including virtually any of the metadata fields, and you can have Lightroom rename your files for you. Make a second copy of your stuff. Lightroom will do that for you on a separate external hard drive. It is highly recommended. And keep your Lightroom catalog in Dropbox. That little green checkbox here means that this Lightroom catalog is safely stored also in the cloud, accessible anywhere from any computer that I can access my Dropbox, either using the web browser or the Dropbox application. And finally, the truth is in the catalog. What this means is that as you're working, you'll find that you have your metadata stored in your files, but also in the catalog, the Lightroom catalog. And this gives you even an additional level of assurance in case you copy data back into your images, make changes that you don't really like. You can always roll back your Lightroom catalog previous to the date previous to when you made your changes. And that is another good thing that helps assure happy goodness.